This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on Pravasi Bhartiya Diwas, Indian Diaspora as reliable partners for nation's progress in Amrit Kaal. The participants are Skandaranjan Tayal, former diplomat, and V. Ravi Kumar, AIR correspondent.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated the 17th Pravasi Bhartiya Diwas Convention in Indore, Madhya Pradesh today. Pravasi Bhartiya Diwas Convention is the flagship event of the Government of India that provides an important platform to engage and connect with overseas Indians and enable the diaspora to interact with each other. The theme of this convention is Diaspora, Reliable Partners for India's Progress in Amrit Kaal. Ambassador Tayal, Pravasi Bharatiya or non-resident Indians have contributed majorly to India's progress right from the freedom struggle period. This is the first PBD convention being held physically after almost 4 years, and while India is celebrating 75 years of independence. India now has the world's largest diaspora population at around 20 million. Considering all these factors, what is the significance of this 17th PBD being held in Indore?
It's very significant as India is now poised for a jump start in growth in our economic development as well as social development. And all the levers at the disposal of the society are being energized and are being leveraged. We have 20 million people of Indian origin, maybe 30 million, sometimes it is said, or even more. And their contribution is already high as remittances from our diaspora abroad back to India is the world's highest, $80 billion more per year, which is almost 3% of our GDP. But now that the theme of this 17th conference is reliable partners in Amrit Kaal, I recall that when IT revolution took place from 1995 onwards, the people of Indian origin who were IT experts and CEOs of IT companies, they played a very large role in acting as a bridge between India and IT requirements of those countries. And now the fifth technological revolution is on, artificial intelligence, metadata, and all kinds of new technologies are on the horizon. And a very large number of Indian researchers, scientists are working in India, as well as a very large number of Indian origin scientists and researchers working in United States and other Western laboratories and institutions. That gives a platform for India to be at the forefront of the new technologies. The government has recently announced that the green hydrogen mission, which is a very far-sighted mission. We are using solar energy, but solar cells we are not making. They are all being imported. But in the new technologies, if India is at the cutting edge and innovation, R&D, it needs partners, and the best partners would be scientists, researchers, entrepreneurs of Indian origin who are working in the same field in other countries.
Ambassador Tayal, India is now the fifth largest economy in the world, and the Prime Minister also mentioned that, and we are on the cusp of rapid economic progress. And you mentioned remittances, almost over $80 billion every year. And you mentioned that in the IT revolution back in the 90s, the diaspora had played a large role. So what are the other areas that the diaspora can contribute to India's progress in the upcoming decades as well? In fact, the Prime Minister referred to the cashless economy and the growing fintechs in India. And one of the plenaries today was on the topic of role of diaspora youth in innovations and new technologies. So what are the synergies we can develop here?
India has developed very original technology, whether it is in our Aadhaar card or digital payment, and India is ready to share this technology with other countries, particularly developing countries. And that is one sector, financial technology, fintech sector, where people of Indian origin are at the top. So that is one area. But another field where I feel that people of Indian origin can be helpful is that India has a very unique position in the world, and our thinking is also unideological and individual-centric. And on many issues, India stands on Ukraine or climate change. Sometimes people of other countries fail to fully appreciate what is India trying to say, because often our stand is not absolutely ditto of what the Western world is, because they look at things from their own perspective. And that is where the people of Indian origin in positions of influence in other countries as members of parliament, as leaders, as CEOs can make India's position better understood in the corridors of power in other countries.
In fact, one of the people who has been at the forefront of laying the new ideas that India has, the new importance that India has in the world scenario has been Dr. S. Jaishankar, who is the foreign minister. In his inaugural remarks, he said one of the purposes of the convention is to refresh the connect that the NRIs have with India, to re-energize this connect and to expand the scope of this connect. And we are saying that the theme of this convention is Diaspora, reliable partners for India's progress in Amrit Kaal. So what are those things that the government is doing to make sure that the diaspora feel as partners for India's progress? And what are the further things that the government should do to expand the scope?
17th conference, which started from 2004, that has now covered a very large number of influential people of Indian origin in different parts of the world. So that is one whole objective which has gradually been fulfilled. Because when one goes abroad, a lot of people will meet, say that, oh, I had attended, I had been invited for panel discussion on such and such. So that is one. And when the country of your forefathers reaches out and then says that, oh, you have done well and people of India are happy, please come and share with us your experience, or please come and we will give you the Pravasi Samman Award, that makes a very strong impact on those persons as well as their families. Person who gets the Pravasi Bhartiya Samman Award, I have seen, I was in America, somebody I knew got that award, and how the whole city felt so energized and they had meetings to felicitate that gentleman. So a lot has already been achieved, but the third thing, we have to be a little more focused on youth. What is happening is that the people from India, say for the United States who had gone in the 70s, 80s, they of course have a very deep attachment with India, but their children, often they are connected with India and sometimes they are not very well connected with India. So the focus on youth, that the next generation of youth which is born abroad, brought up abroad, working abroad, but of Indian origin, they also have an emotional connection with India as well as a feeling, a desire that India should progress, India should move fast. Let me see what I can do to work in that direction. And there are multiple ways one can do that, whether it is dealing with a pandemic. So many people of Indian origin donated so much of equipment at that time when India had the severe Delta COVID problem. But again, I will say that technology transfer, facilitation, investment, and a connection at a political level so that India is better understood in countries abroad. In that, people of Indian origin can be very helpful as partners of India. And in all our embassies, we keep a very close touch with important people of Indian origin, whether they are in the political sphere or entrepreneurs or scientists, and keep on motivating them so that they look at India and do whatever they can to help India rise.
Right, Ambassador Tayal. Very critical points being made by you that the earlier generation people who migrated in the 70s already have a deep connect with India, but the newer generation, the Gen Zs, the millennials, the bonds are not as strong as the earlier generations had. So the government, as you rightly mentioned, is trying to engage with the younger generation as well. In his address today, Prime Minister Modi referred to Pravasi Bhartiya as the Rashtraduts, or the national ambassadors of India's heritage. And he specifically mentioned Make in India, Yoga, Ayurveda, India's cottage industries and handicrafts. So how can the Pravasi Bhartiya make a contribution in these sectors to India's progress to mutual benefit?
In my experience in abroad, I have seen how the Indian culture, Indian dances are popularized in countries wherever our diaspora is, and music, food. So already this is being done not in a systematic, organized way, but because individuals who go from India or who have gone from India, they are very talented and they have their own skills in art, in food, in film, in shamalan, etc. So they popularize their own skills, which are based on Indian arts and culture. But Prime Minister is giving it now a more focused direction. Yoga, of course, is already very popular. With the International Yoga, they announced UN in 2015 and all that. So I think on that, a lot has already been done. But India's food and millet and this kind of new food grains, which Prime Minister is now focusing on, and Ayurveda, and that healing powers, the long-term healing powers, and because it helps strengthen body's immunity and natural resistance to diseases. That is the plus point which needs to be properly explained to a Western mind, and that is where Indian diaspora can be helpful, because people of Indian origin come to India, they always take back their Chyawanprash and there are all kinds of so many
and Ayurvedic medicines,
local Ayurvedic medicines which we have used for generations.
Right. You mentioned the International Year of Millets. 2023 is the International Year of Millets, and the Prime Minister, interestingly, in his speech today, urged the attendees to take some millet products back home and be the brand ambassador for millets abroad. Hopefully, that will help some synergies with the Indian agri sector. You mentioned briefly on the dances and culture. One of the plenaries that is being held in this edition of PBD is leveraging the soft power of India, goodwill through craft, cuisine and creativity. And there is a lot that can be done here. I mean, you see the soft power of Hollywood. Indian cinema is also growing. Now you have movies that are being listed there and being watched very keenly. But a lot more can be done. So what do you see as the options to develop the soft power further using the diaspora?
It cannot be very much a kind of a directed effort. The people of Indian origin who are active in creative arts or filmmaking, perhaps some themes can be suggested to them on which they could work, which could be helpful in projection of India's image. That could be one part, because, well, lately there has been less, but earlier in the Western TV, there used to be lots of very negative documentaries about India, which always showed the worst that was in our country rather than showing anything good. So that kind of negative publicity, fortunately, is no longer there. But to put the highlights, the positive things, the positive stories in the world media or in the consciousness of people abroad, for that people of Indian origin can be a helpful vehicle, a helpful partner. So this needs to be country specific. I would think that our embassies or people in different countries should try to make their own mini objectives, what they can achieve with the partnership of Indian diaspora in their own countries, because the situation is very different. For instance, South Africa, people of India different, US is different, and even in small countries like Poland, etc., they were a small number, but very effective number of people of Indian origin. So it cannot be something which can be generalized. But for instance, in the United States, goal could be to help the local senators and House of Representative members by the people of Indian origin, so that whenever India requires some vote or something for any legislation affecting India, then these people approach their senator and House of Representatives and they listen, they respond. So this becomes a modus operandi to approach the political power of the country where people of Indian origin are. So that is what I'm saying, that it has to be country specific, that what can be achieved in some countries, a lot can be achieved. In the United States, people of Indian origin have played this stellar role. For instance, in the nuclear supply and that India-Indo-US nuclear energy agreement. But the same cannot be replicated everywhere.
Right, Ambassador Tayal, thank you so much for joining us and enlightening us on the various aspects of the diaspora and them being reliable partners for India's progress in Amrit Kaal.
Thank you very much.
You were listening to a discussion on Pravasi Bhartiya Diwas, Indian diaspora as reliable partners for nation's progress in Amrit Kaal. The participants were Skandaranjan Tayal, former diplomat, and V. Ravi Kumar, AIR correspondent. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsdtalks@gmail.com.